A line that exists in every sport, in every competition, at every level, the invisible boundary between hard, aggressive, winning baseball and something else entirely. Something that makes veterans uncomfortable. Something that makes managers bite their tongues in press conferences. Something that makes the entire baseball world lean forward and ask the same question at the same time. How far is too far? That question exploded across the sport when footage emerged of what Corey Seager, one of the most respected names in the Texas Rangers lineup, a player with a reputation, a player with a legacy to protect, did to Shohei Ohtani. Not a clean play that looked rough on replay. Not a competitive collision that both sides can shake hands over after the final out. A vicious play. The kind that makes you watch it once and then immediately watch it again, not because it was exciting, but because you genuinely cannot believe what you just saw. And the umpires saw it too. Because within moments, the punishment came down. Now the baseball world is divided. Defenders on one side. Outraged voices on the other. And somewhere at the center of all of it, calm, focused, saying almost nothing publicly, is Shohei Ohtani. The man who was targeted. The man who, somehow, always ends up at the center of the sport's biggest moments, whether he chooses to be or not. This is the full story. Every detail. Every angle. Everything that the highlights didn't show you. And by the end of it, you'll understand exactly why this moment matters far beyond one play in one game. Let's go back to the moment itself. Because before the outrage, before the punishment, before the baseball world split into two loud, opposing camps, there was a single play. A single decision made in a fraction of a second that set everything in motion. Seager is a player who understands the game deeply. Nobody reaches his level of consistent performance without an intimate knowledge of baseball's rhythms, its rules, and yes, its gray areas. The spaces where aggressive play and dangerous play begin to blur together. What happened in that moment was not accidental. That's the part that ignited everything. A truly accidental play, even a brutal one, carries a different emotional weight. Players get hurt in baseball. Collisions happen. Cleats catch awkwardly. Bodies move in ways nobody planned for. The game understands this, and it responds accordingly, with concern, with medical attention, and ultimately with a kind of shared acknowledgement that competition carries physical risk. But this wasn't that. What the footage revealed, and the word revealed matters here, because this is a play that required people to slow it down, zoom in, and watch it frame by frame before the full picture became clear, was intention. Or at minimum, a recklessness so severe that intention and recklessness become functionally indistinguishable. And it was directed at Ohtani. The best player in the sport. The face of baseball's global expansion. The one player every opposing team, every opposing manager, every opposing pitcher and fielder thinks about differently than anyone else on any roster. That player. That play. No wonder the reaction was immediate. No wonder the word outrage doesn't feel like an exaggeration. Here's something that needs to be said clearly and directly. If this play had happened to a different player, a solid starter, a respected veteran, a reliable contributor to his team, it would still be wrong. It would still warrant scrutiny. It would still deserve whatever punishment the umpires chose to hand down. But it would not have generated the level of reaction this play generated. Because this play happened to Ohtani. And Ohtani is not just a player. He is, at this moment in baseball history, something the sport has been waiting for without fully knowing it was waiting. A talent so rare, a combination of skills so unprecedented, that his presence in a lineup changes not just the game being played but the entire conversation around the game. When Ohtani gets hurt, even slightly, even temporarily, the entire sport feels it. Ticket sales, television ratings, merchandise, international attention, the energy inside ballparks across the league, all of it is connected, in ways both obvious and subtle, to his participation and his health. So when a play threatens that, when a vicious, punishable act puts Ohtani's body at risk, the reaction isn't just emotional. It isn't just fans being protective of their favorite player. It is the sport itself recoiling from the possibility of losing something irreplaceable. That's the stakes underneath this story. That's why the outrage didn't fade after a few hours. That's why it grew. The punishment came. And in baseball, that matters enormously. Because the sport has a complicated relationship with its own enforcement mechanisms, a long, layered history of plays that should have been punished but weren't, of decisions that were made too slowly, too leniently, or not at all. So when the umpires acted, quickly, clearly, decisively, it sent a message that went beyond this specific incident. It said, this crossed a line. Not a judgment call. Not a matter of interpretation. A clear, definitive crossing of the boundary between competitive baseball and something the sport refuses to accept. For Seager, the punishment is significant, not just in the practical sense of games missed or fines paid, but in the reputational sense. Because Seager has spent his career building an identity as a winning player, a clutch performer, a cornerstone of his franchise. That identity takes years to construct and can be complicated, not destroyed, but complicated, by a single moment that the entire sport watches on repeat. The question now isn't whether the punishment was deserved. The umpires already answered that. The question is what it means going forward, for Seager, for the Rangers, and for the unwritten rules that govern how opposing players approach Ohtani for the rest of this season. Baseball has a rulebook. Everyone knows this. But baseball also has something older and in many ways more powerful than its official rulebook, a set of unwritten codes that govern how the game is played between the lines, how players treat each other in competition, and where the boundaries of acceptable aggression are drawn. These unwritten rules are not posted anywhere. They are not taught in a classroom or written into a contract. They are absorbed over years of playing the game at high levels, passed down from veterans to rookies, enforced not by umpires but by the culture of the sport itself. And what Seager did, according to virtually every voice that has weighed in with genuine baseball knowledge, violated those unwritten rules in a way that is difficult to walk back. You can argue about pitch framing. You can debate infield positioning. You can have legitimate, reasonable disagreements about the strike zone or the shift or the proper way to break up a double play. But there are certain things baseball simply does not do. And targeting a player, any player, but especially the player, the way Seager targeted Ohtani in that moment is one of them. Veterans know it. Managers know it. The umpires clearly knew it, which is why the response was as swift and decisive as it was. The unwritten rules spoke. And they were not subtle. Here's where this story gets more complicated. And honest coverage demands that we go here. Corey Seager is not a dirty player. That's important to say. His career, his body of work, his reputation inside the sport does not suggest someone who operates outside the lines, who looks for opportunities to injure opponents, who plays with reckless disregard for the safety of other players. He is a fierce competitor. A player who gives everything in pursuit of winning. A cornerstone of his franchise who takes that responsibility seriously. Which is precisely why this moment is so jarring. Because it doesn't fit the profile. It doesn't match the player we thought we understood. And that disconnect, between reputation and action, between the player Seager has always appeared to be and the play that is now attached to his name, is something he will have to reckon with publicly and privately. Did the competitive fire of the moment overwhelm his judgment? Did something in that specific situation, the pressure, the opponent, the stakes, push him past a line he would normally never approach? Baseball has seen this before. Great players making decisions in heated moments that they immediately regret. Reputations that survive because the history is too strong to be erased by a single incident, but that carry the weight of that incident forward regardless. Seager's story isn't over. His career isn't defined by this play. But this play is now part of his story. And how he responds, publicly, personally, and on the field going forward, will say as much about his character as the play itself did. Organizations speak in many ways. Sometimes they hold press conferences. Sometimes they release carefully worded statements. Sometimes they make personnel decisions that send clear messages without requiring a single word. And sometimes, notably, meaningfully, they say almost nothing. The Rangers' response to this incident will be studied carefully by everyone paying attention. Because how a franchise handles a moment like this, how quickly they address it, how honestly they acknowledge what happened, how clearly they signal their own values in response, reveals something about the organization's culture that no marketing campaign or media guide ever could. Players watch. Opponents watch. The league watches. And fans, who invest enormous emotional energy into these franchises, watch most carefully of all. The punishment from the umpires was external accountability. What the Rangers choose to do internally, the conversations that happen behind closed doors, the standards that are reaffirmed or quietly abandoned, that's where the real organizational character gets revealed. This moment is a test. How the Rangers respond to it will be part of this story for longer than the play itself. And then there's Ohtani, who, as is so often the case, said the most by saying the least. No inflammatory comments. No social media reaction. No public statement designed to pour fuel on an already burning fire. No visible anger that would give the moment a different kind of energy than it deserved. Just composure. The same composure he brings to every at-bat. The same composure he maintains whether he's hitting a first-pitch home run off an elite arm or navigating a moment of genuine physical danger on the field. There is something in Ohtani's public stillness that is simultaneously admirable and almost difficult to fully understand. Because most human beings, most athletes, people trained from childhood to be competitive and reactive and emotionally invested in every play, would find it nearly impossible to respond to a vicious play against them with the kind of calm that Ohtani consistently projects. But this is who he is. Or more accurately, this is who he has built himself to be. Through years of discipline, self-management, and a clear understanding of what serves his performance and what doesn't. Reacting publicly doesn't help him prepare for tomorrow's game. It doesn't help his team. It doesn't advance any purpose he cares about. So he doesn't react. He refocuses. And that restraint, in a moment when everyone else in the sport is loud, makes him the most powerful voice in the room. This incident doesn't end when the punishment is handed down. It echoes. Every time Seager and Ohtani are in the same game for the rest of 2025, this moment will be in the room. Every time a Rangers pitcher faces Ohtani, every time Ohtani steps into the batter's box against Texas, the history of this play will be present, shaping decisions, influencing energy, adding a layer of tension that would not exist without it. That's the nature of these moments in baseball. They create history that doesn't disappear when the final out is recorded. They become part of the ongoing story between two franchises, two players, two sets of fans who will carry this moment forward into every future encounter. For Ohtani, the challenge is to let none of that affect what he does between the lines. To treat every at-bat against every opponent, including Seager, including the Rangers, with the same preparation, the same focus, the same relentless commitment to excellence that has defined every chapter of his career so far. History suggests he will do exactly that. History suggests that the only response Ohtani will give to what happened is the one he always gives. Performance. One vicious play. One swift punishment. One sport holding its breath. And at the center of it all, calm, focused, already preparing for the next game, Shohei Ohtani. The outrage was real. The punishment was deserved. The conversation it started is one baseball needed to have. But the most important thing that will come out of this moment? Watch what Ohtani does next time he steps into the box. Watch how he responds not with words but with the only language that has ever truly defined him. The crack of the bat. The ball disappearing into the stands. And that quiet, unhurried trot around the bases, as if to say, clearly and without a single word spoken, "You cannot rattle me. You cannot stop me." You cannot change what I am going to do to this game. That's Ohtani's answer to everything. And it always will be.